Hello, my name is Aaron, and before I begin to tell you about the Panic Away program, I want to share with you a little bit about myself first. Now, before I begin, I want to know, how serious are you? Ask yourself these questions. Am I really tired of suffering with anxiety and panic attacks? Am I really serious about finding a solution? If I found a solution today, would I act on it immediately? If you are serious about getting rid of your anxiety and panic attacks, then please take the time to listen to this whole presentation, as it will most likely be the most important message you will receive this year. This is me. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a real person just like you. One that suffered with anxiety for over 15 years. I spent my childhood watching my mom battle with anxiety problems. I always thought this was my mother's problem, so I had no idea that I would ever experience the same thing. It started years ago in the 70s. My mom was trying to raise me as a single parent back then, and life was not easy. With all the stress of trying to care for me, my mother had her first panic attack on the train. Ever since then, my mother became anxious and claustrophobic in any place that didn't have an open door. She could no longer take the train. Now, initially, this may not have seemed like such a crippling illness. However, when you are growing up in a major city like New York and can't afford a car, your major form of transportation is the train. So, of course, this had a huge effect on our lives. Many times I felt frustrated and limited because of her anxiety. I can remember my mother spending $349 on anxiety tapes to help her get better. $349 was a lot of money back in the 80s. Well, actually, $349 is still a lot of money even now. In trying to be supportive, I would listen to the tapes with her. I can remember learning breathing exercises and other little techniques to help her relax. I never thought I would need the same type of help. Since I always thought this was my mother's problem, I had no idea that I would ever experience the same thing. But I did. It was 15 years ago in college when I had my first panic attack. I can still remember it. I was sitting in the living room. I started to feel anxious, nervous, difficulty breathing. My heart was pounding. I started sweating. I felt confused, disoriented, very much like this guy. Have you ever felt that way? I was in college for physical therapy and I had to prepare for many tests. I was dating my wife at the time, and my grandfather had just died, and he lived with us for about 5 years. And now we were about to starting to take care of my great-grandmother. So my life was packed. Does this sound like your life? Too many things going on at the same time? Do you feel like her? Overwhelmed at times? I guess for me, with all the stress, it culminated into a full-blown panic attack. It felt more like I was having a heart attack. So I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. Now, I had the illness that I thought would only belong to my mother. Now, anxiety was in control of me. As time went on, things got worse, because now I was picking up bad habits to control my anxiety. Overeating was one of them, or as we now call it, emotional eating. My addiction was ice cream. It seems that any time I would feel stressed, I would have this uncontrollable urge for Haagen-Dazs ice cream. Now, a little bit is okay, but I would eat the whole pint almost every day. Needless to say, I gained weight, and a lot of it. Here's a picture of me right before college. Right before I entered college, this is how I looked. Pretty thin. And this was me a few years after college. I was 30 pounds heavier from emotional eating. It's a big difference. This was getting out of control. How could I function if anxiety controlled me? By this point, I was now married. Would this affect my marriage? So I wanted a solution. I wanted a way out. And it was then that I realized why my mother was searching for an anxiety program. She didn't just want a program, she was looking for a way out. She wanted freedom from living a restricted life. She was looking for a way to be a better mother, a better wife now because now she was married, a better worker. That was her real motivation. And now I needed the same thing. My motivation was looking for a way to be a better husband, a better friend, and to control my eating habits and these cravings for sweets. If you suffer from anxiety and panic attacks, you're here not because you're looking for an anxiety program, but because you want freedom too. Isn't that true? You want to be a better parent, wife, husband, boyfriend or girlfriend, worker or friend. But you have to find out what's motivating you for being here today. For me, the solution didn't come out till years later. The Panic Away program didn't come out till 2001, and I didn't find out about it until a few years after that. And I went through the same emotions as you did, trying to figure out if this program was legit. It's hard to trust anything on the internet anyway. Plus, most people with anxiety will tell you we have a hard time trusting people in general. But all I knew was that I was serious. It wasn't easy because I didn't have the $349 like my mother did. To be honest with you, I decided to try the Panic Away program because I liked the price. It wasn't $300, it wasn't $200, it wasn't even $100. In fact, it is less than a pair of sneakers I had in my closet. But it proved to be an excellent solution for me. The author's name is Barry Magdaleno. Barry is a simple guy like you and me, who suffered at the hands of debilitating anxiety before turning things around. Now he teaches others how to do the same thing.
Barry, I would be a general practitioner with over 30 years experience, and over the years I've had a particular interest in two aspects of mental health. Firstly, how basically it affects people. I'm particularly interested in the areas of anxiety, that's both acute anxiety like panic attacks and phobias, and general anxiety, social phobias, and I have a special interest as well in depression. In fact, I'm one of the board members of our national organisation for depression here in Ireland. And I suppose the book was written due to a particularly tragic occurrence in my own town here in Drogheda. My first book came out in 2007. And a couple of years before that, a young boy took his own life in the most tragic way in Drogheda, where the body was unfortunately went into the river and was not found for quite a long time, coming up eventually on Christmas Eve. An absolutely tragic kind of story. And it kind of brought to a head for me, how so many people are getting so distressed from both panic attacks, anxiety and depression. The great word for me is to normalize these conditions, because there is such fear and misunderstanding and apprehension about all these terms and labels like depression and anxiety. What do they actually mean? And the second great area of mine for many, many years, I've been fascinated by the area of neuroscience, how the brain works. And I'm particularly interested in what we call the plasticity of the brain, which is, why do we get these conditions to start with? What happens? What kind of changes do we get in the brain? What kind of connections and pathways are affected by our genes and upbringing? And also, more importantly, how do all the particular therapies work? What are they actually doing in the brain? Because that's the secret, really. Once you begin to understand what happens to us as people and what's going on in that little box upstairs, and how they're both intimately connected, whether we like it or not, what it does is it kind of brushes away all the misunderstandings and confusions, because it can all be just very, very simple ideas. Our brain is an incredibly simple organ. And maybe I'll share with you one wonderful concept that for me is at the heart of all of mental health. That is that we have at the front of our brain what I call our logical brain. It makes up 1/3 of our brain, and its basic task is to kind of be logical and reasonable and control our emotions and control our behavior. And in the middle of our brain is an area called the limbic system, which is really our emotional brain. And a very famous scientist looked at connections between these two, and to his great surprise discovered that the connections from the emotional brain were much, much stronger to the logical brain than in reverse. And this, of course, this had huge implications for how we understood mental health, because all of us, when we go through every day, everything that happens to us is a mixture of emotion and logic, and they're both in harmony. So sometimes we'll do things very emotionally, and sometimes we'll do them very logically. In America, for example, suppose America loses the Ryder Cup, and there's a tremendous feeling of sadness. Or Europe loses the Ryder Cup, and there's an even greater feeling of sadness over here. Yeah. But what happens is our emotional brain goes into this kind of sadness for a couple of days, but then our logical brain begins to switch on, and our logical brain begins to say, but there's always 2 years' time. Do you know what I mean? So what we do is we rationalize the emotion. But what happens when we become unwell, and this is the secret to panic attacks and to anxiety and to depression, is that the emotional brain goes into negative mode. It literally goes into pure negative mode, and the logical brain loses its normal ability to regain control. And that, believe it or not, is at the heart of panic attacks. It's at the heart of depression, those two illnesses in particular, and anxiety in general. So if we could kind of understand that the secret is that any therapy that can reorganize that balance will work.
Yeah.
And so what I did, for example, applying the therapy, I explained how all the varying therapies affected the emotional and logical brain. The whole key is to kind of dampen down the emotional brain, strengthen up your logical brain, and get them back in harmony again. And I think nothing probably shows that more acutely than, for example, a panic attack. In a panic attack, our whole emotional brain goes into total negative mode, And unfortunately, our emotional brain is in charge of our whole stress system. So when that happens, our whole stress system becomes completely hyped up, and our logical brain nearly gets swamped, because our emotional brain begins to kind of feel that something terrible is going to happen. I'm going to die, I'm going to have a heart attack, I'm going to have a stroke. And the emotional brain can be so strong in these circumstances. It can just absolutely flood our logical brain. So even though deep down, somewhere inside of our brain, we kind of know in our heart and soul that we're not going to die and that we're not going to have a heart attack, our emotional brain is so strong that it still swamps that logic. And of course, that's why people become so frightened of panic attacks. And similarly, in depression, what happens is that the emotional brain, due to kind of, there are connections between the emotional and logical brain, and we now know from a lot of neuroscience that what happens in depression is that these connections actually go down. And what happens is when we come under stress, our mood can fall, and once again our emotional brain swamps our logical brain, and our logic brain can't switch it off. So to me, this is so exciting, because if we understand this ability of the emotional and logical brain to actually change and particularly alter its what we call its plasticity, by varying therapies, we can restructure these pathways again and regain control and get things back into kind of balance again. So that concept, believe it or not, from a clinical point of view and from a neuroscience point of view, should lie at the very heart of our understanding of why we get these conditions, and most of all, what therapies work and what don't.
The Panic Away program has 2 phases. The first is to get rid of your panic attacks. The second is to reduce your overall anxiety level. The key thing to note is that the book isn't just about coping with panic attacks. It's about completely stopping debilitating anxiety and its underlying cause. The Panic Away program works for people with anxiety problems of varying severity, so all levels. The benefits of using the Panic Away program is freedom, control over your life again, affordable, simple to apply with fast results, becoming the best you can possibly be. Would I recommend this program? Yes, definitely. It was the solution I was looking for.
Hi there, it's Jackie Smith calling from New Zealand. I'd just like to ring firstly to thank Joe for introducing the Panic Away program to me. I was a skeptical user and found through my recent flights internationally that the program did work for me, so thanks Joe. I've suffered from general anxiety disorder and claustrophobia for 18 years now. And this gradually manifested into flying. I had gotten to the point where I was using a lot of crutches, i.e. alcohol and drugs, to help me get through fearful situations, which I have learned is not the healthy way of approaching it or real with what is going on in my life. I'd gotten to the point where I'd said enough. My fiancé and I had a trip planned to Rarotonga, and I decided I needed to conquer my fear and use the internet to find out about the Panic Away program. To me it was a last resort. I felt very nervous and sceptical, as I said, using this program, and I put it to the test. I followed the program before I went to Rarotonga, so integrated the One Move and the program into my life, which has just been fantastic. And through building confidence in various situations, I've now got a record that I can reflect back on to know that, yeah, it does work and that I'm not alone with this. So now for me, there is no more alcohol needed on flights, no more falling off the plane at the other end, and no more fearing holidays, which is just beautiful. So thank you, Joe. It's changed my life, and I really hope that other people that are sceptical as me can use it. I say this from a genuine anxiety sufferer, no longer. Thanks very much. Bye.
My name is Reverend Frederick Kohler. I just wanted everyone to know that this course, Panic Away, is phenomenal. I have suffered with anxiety panic attacks for over 7 years off and on, and have been subjected to every kind of antidepressants out there. Sure, they help to a degree, but the true help is a combination of this course, Panic Away, and your attitude. After 3 days of reading Panic Away, I could hardly believe that I was beginning to feel better. After a month, I went from having one anxiety attack every day to one in the last month. I'm also being weaned off my medication because I don't need that much anymore. Of course, I must give credit where credit is due. It's no sheer happenstance that I came upon this site. I prayed long and hard for God to give me a miracle because I had nothing left in me to continue to fight and flee these attacks. And that day, I came across Panic Away. It was a godsend. I thank Him every day for this, and I also thank God for working through Joe Barry to have this course available on the Internet for all of us or you that need help too. Buy this today. It really works. Stay blessed.
But now, what about you? In order to be successful with any program, you need to ask yourself a few questions. The main one is, what's motivating me in finding a solution today? For me, it was my family. So again, how serious are you? If you found a solution today, would you act on it immediately? If you're serious about getting rid of your anxiety and panic attacks, then click the picture you see on this page. It's your turn now to get your life back in control. As far as my mom, she got her life back. She started taking short trips on the train and riding elevators. She admits being terrified, but she used the tools she learned and has succeeded. Since then, she has flown to Georgia, Switzerland, France, Italy, Venice, and getting ready to plan a trip to New Zealand. Oh, and what about me and my wife? Yep, this is the girl that I was dating in college. This is me and my wife now in St. Martin. I'm proud to say that I am one of over 600,000 people that has benefited greatly from this program. I honestly can't remember the last time I had a panic attack. Now it's your turn. Click the button and take action today. I want to hear about your success story next. Take care.